Welcome everyone to this episode of A Story Always, in which we have the great pleasure of having with us Kira Magrann. How are you, Kira? Thanks a lot for being here today.
Thanks for having me. I like your Twitch streams. I liked it when you ran a cozy den. That was super cool. I'd never seen it run before in a different language, so that was an awesome experience.
Yeah, thanks a lot. We had a lot of fun. It was one of those times where our usual game of Monster Hearts was one of the players could not come, so I was like, you know what? I have this game here. It's new. Let me tell you about it. And somehow it worked.
Yeah. I mean, they're very similar, Monster Hearts and a cozy den, and in some ways, yeah. I mean, you're still playing a monster, and it's about social interactions, which is most of Monster Hearts. So very cool.
So first of all, for the viewers out there, if you have any question for Kira during the interview, feel free to ask them on the chat. I'll do my best to try to bring them to her. And also, for those of you who don't know Kira or who don't know all of her work, Kira is the author of A Cozy Den. Very recently, she is the co-creator of the cyberpunk scene, Resistor. She has collaborated with such projects as the Veil Cascade, the Sprawl November Metric, Warbirds, which I have somewhere here, I should take it out as well, and the Annie-nominated #Feminism LARP collection, which I do have here. And she's a writer in the Annie winner blog, Gnome Stew. And she has a big blog of her own on YouTube, talking about game design and games and all kinds of game-related stuff, which I really recommend. And I'll send all of the links to that. And she also is one of the co-creators of the More Seats at the Table email list, which is a really cool initiative that sends you every month a list of game recommendations from diverse creators, and I really recommend you all check out. But today, the reason we are here mainly is to talk about her new game that is currently on Kickstarter, which is called Something Is Wrong Here. And I would like to start asking you to give us a quick pitch of the game, and in the meantime, I'm going to send all the links to on the chat.
Sure, cool. Thanks for that awesome intro. It makes me sound very prolific. I guess I am.
I actually had to trim it down. So yeah.
Yeah. Too many projects. The story of Kira's life. No, I like working on a lot of different things, and I like a lot of different genres. So the newest thing I'm working on is nothing like a cozy den, and it's called Something Is Wrong Here. It's on Kickstarter right now. And it is basically a game, it's a role-playing game that's inspired by the dark and uncanny world of David Lynch stuff. So things like Twin Peaks or Mulholland Drive or Blue Velvet. Mostly those are the big inspirations for the game. And so it kind of focuses on those types of themes. And it's a very dark and emotional game, intentionally. And it's kind of like an atmospheric horror game that's on cards. So it's a lot of weird things all together. And I'm kind of experimenting with it a little. And I'm super happy how well the Kickstarter is doing. It's a small game I'm experimenting with, and I'm stoked that so many people are into the idea.
Yeah. So talking about a little bit in general about David Lynch and your connection with David Lynch's work, what was the first film or work by David Lynch you ever watched? What was your first interaction with him?
I love that question because I used to hate David Lynch actually when I was younger.
That's probably not that uncommon.
Yeah, I mean, I went to art school. I'm a visual artist kind of first. That's where a lot of my design information comes from. And, I saw, I don't know, it was either Lost Highway or, because it had Nine Inch Nails in it, or like something something. I think there was something else. I think I saw half of Mulholland Drive, and then I stopped watching it because I thought that he was like this pretentious, sensational creator, you know? Because there's so many artists that do that. They're just like, I'm just making something weird to be weird, and that's my jam. And I think that a lot of the times that can be kind of empty. But coming back to it later, like maybe 10 years later, like in my late 20s, I was like, I love this stuff. It's so good. Why didn't I like it when I was younger? And it's just really funny how my perception changed. I started to give artists who were more pretentious, right, a little bit more like attention, a little bit more of a chance. And once I started kind of looking into it, I found a lot of stuff in David Lynch's work that I really connected with personally. So that kind of started me down this trail.
So talking specifically about that, what aspects about David Lynch's work do you connect with? What are the things that really attract you to his work?
Yeah, totally. So there's like a lot of problematic stuff in David Lynch's work. Like, it's definitely a little sexist sometimes, and there's almost no people of color in his work at all. It's almost all white people. So like putting that stuff aside, you know, the stuff that I really connected with was that he tends to have like lesbian or trans characters in all of his work, which is super cool. In Mulholland Drive, that's like one of the best lesbian movies I've ever seen, you know? And there's not too many movies that aren't just about being a lesbian, you know, but are about like the inner landscape of a person's psyche in addition to being a lesbian. And so I really liked that about Mulholland Drive. That really connected with me. And I love all the dark, uncanny stuff. Like, I love horror. I'm a huge horror fan. I have been forever. Like, I will watch bad and good horror. Like, it doesn't even matter how good it is. Because it's kind of like a genre that I think deals with a lot of taboo things. And it can get away with talking about them in a way that other genres can't. And I think that makes it really powerful. It lets you talk about stuff that I think a lot of marginalized folks identify with, like stuff that is weird or monstrous to other people, you know, Monster Hearts way. So, you know, David Lynch does that in his work too, with like diving into these uncanny and dark themes that are kind of nightmarish and obviously very personal to him, but like I connect with a lot of his nightmarish themes, like the idea of doppelgangers really freak me the fuck out. And like dreamscapes, like if you can't tell if you're dreaming or you're awake. So like Freddy Krueger gets me for that same reason, you know. It's like it's something about not recognizing what reality you're in is really terrifying. Yeah, how deep it goes into the identity of the characters. Like almost all of David Lynch's things are just kind of character portraits. Like even Twin Peaks with like an ensemble cast, it's kind of about the characters. So that's my favorite stuff.
Yeah, that's I will say that maybe that's one of the things that are distinguishable about David Lynch. It's not just about cosmic horror or existential horror. It's that connected always to character and the character's inner personality and exploration of that, which is really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And even like his stuff that's more about men, like the Eraserhead, I think is a great example. Like it's about being a father, you know, like, and about being scared of being a father. And like how many movies deal with that theme? Like that's a strong gendered theme that you don't see very often. And I think he just really thinks through those like personal gender interacting with the world, the roles and the archetypes we're supposed to take in the world, and how like what we see on the surface isn't really what's happening like underneath. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a fascinating author, or where we want to define it if you are into the like death of author thing.
Auteur, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Although even as an author, I've maybe you probably know more about him in that regard. But even as an author, he's very different. That he doesn't see himself as this like, oh, everything has to be done my way. It has to be perfect, and doesn't matter if I have to make everyone suffer in the set or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that about him actually. Like if you watch any of the behind the scenes stuff of him like working with the actors, he like creates a family on set. Like people love working with him because he makes it like this environment that's fun and creative to work on. And everything that he does is collaborative. Like he'll come to people with kind of a suggestion of what they should do. And then like I think Kyle MacLachlan makes fun of him for this, like in multiple interviews where he's just like, yeah, he'll just tell me to like, you know, do it more like a robot in this scene. And then I'll just have to do that, you know, whatever he deciphers. And he has kind of like this sensibility about him that's very like, it's just very fine artisty, which is like, I think another reason I connect with him because he like, because I also was really interested in the fine arts and stuff when I was in school. And I still am, totally. I love fine art. But he makes it this collaborative, interactive process, which I think was why I didn't like a lot of the fine arts culture. It was very like, in a gallery and like rich people have to buy it and you have to market it to them. And it's like the art dealers are it's like a weird, corrupt system. And so he kind of took like all these ideas about fine art that I like the most, which is kind of like dealing with the subconscious and working with other people and creating something meaningful and weird and like made it accessible to people, you know? He's a fine artist filmmaker. He's making like these weird concepts accessible to people through film, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, and also the fact that he has done that and somehow he's still managed to be reasonably successful, more or less popular in the mainstream, which is really, really difficult.
Yeah. It seems to mostly be luck. Like he's one of the only filmmakers. There's tons of surrealist filmmakers, and he's one of the only ones who's actually like made it as big. And even then, he's had tons of issues with like, you know, TV studios and film studios, and they kind of want to tell him what to do, and he doesn't want to do what they want him to do, and you know, all the money involved. And he talks about it a lot in a meta way in his artwork. Not compromising your art for money or for those businesses that want to try and like steal your artist heart away is kind of like how he puts it.
I mean, if you see Mulholland Drive, part of it is that I mean, it shows the shitty system on how Hollywood like basically destroys people's souls.
Yeah, that's mostly what that's about. And Mulholland Drive originally was supposed to be a TV show that was going to be a sequel to Twin Peaks and star Audrey Horne. Like it was supposed to be about the character Audrey Horne in Twin Peaks, but it didn't work out because studio nonsense. So he's like, fine, I'm making a fucking movie. And I mean, we all have to navigate, you know, capitalist systems and these systems as artists because we have to still survive in them and make things in them, right? But I like the way that he approaches it as kind of just like, I'm going to take whatever path I can to make the best thing I possibly can as close to my vision. I think that's really cool.
Yeah. What was the reason that, like, you decided that for all of this complex work and persona, why did you decide that you wanted to make a game out of that?
Oh my god, I have no idea. To be honest, it was like really hard at first because it is like you just said, it is really complex. Like, and so I kind of had to pick apart the things from his work that I liked the best. And I was mostly inspired by Twin Peaks: The Return that came out last year. I don't know if you're familiar with it at all, but
I've watched Twin Peaks the original because after the new one came out, because I'm from a different generation that didn't start out originally, so I'm still keeping myself, like, reserving myself to watch it because I've heard from others, like, and everyone says that it's like the biggest thing ever.
Yeah. It's funny. I didn't watch it when it was on TV either. It was a little before my time, but I did watch it a few years ago, the original, and then I watched it again, leading right up to the release of The Return last year. Watching it all at once was pretty cool, actually. Yeah, and it's so weird. Like, I think people talk it up a lot. Like, I love it, but it is like really cheesy and bad sometimes. Like, it's obviously very dated, and at the same time, I think it was like watching it when it first came out was probably more impactful because it created a lot of things that we see in TV now that are just like tropes. Like, you know, a dead girl starts a murder mystery TV show is like such a trope now. Thanks, Twin Peaks. And you know, the idea of like horror in a small American town, like that's so common now, but it was like brand new with Twin Peaks, and it was very scandalous like when it came out, right? So the new one came out, and I was like, I don't know, I like this. I like David Lynch. I'm gonna watch it. And it like my mind like exploded watching this show. It was like the best TV. I watch a lot of TV. I like TV a lot. It was like the best TV I'd seen maybe in like 10 years, like including The Wire. And like I just thought it's just so masterfully made. Like it definitely still has some issues, but it's like you just don't see that type of cinematography, storytelling, acting, like surrealist cinema effects in TV anywhere. Like you see it in movies, you see it in art films, but it's not on TV. And like, so yeah, that just blew my mind. I thought that was amazing that he brought it to Showtime.
So, why did you? So the reason was that you really liked the new show,
yeah,
and just wanted to make a.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I didn't answer your question. I got distracted by Twin Peaks stories. Yeah, I thought that it would make a cool experience. Like I wanted to make a game that would feel like a David Lynch experience, that would feel like Twin Peaks: The Return made me feel last year. Like it was so inspirational to me. Just like how he mixed the media, how he brought it to TV, the character stories, the imagery, the scary supernatural parts. Like I wanted to turn that into a game because I guess essentially I just want to like share my experiences with people. And so I think that's the motivation behind a lot of my games, is just to kind of make something that I would want to play. And so I wanted to play a game that felt like a David Lynch thing. So that's how I made it.
And how did you decide what specifically what parts of David Lynch's work did you decide to pick for your game? What things, what aspects? Because there's many things to pick from.
Yeah. Well, some people, I think there's a few Twin Peaks inspired games. And they kind of focus on the investigation aspects, like kind of like an X-Files-y supernatural detective type story. And I'm not into that as much. I think it's fun, but there are so many games that do that really well already. You know, like Cthulhu or anything like that. So I kind of wanted to focus on more of the horror elements. And the identity issues, because those are my favorite parts. And so I kind of like went through and like figured out which David Lynch things I wanted to be the touchstones. So those were like Twin Peaks, Mulholland Drive, and Blue Velvet. I wanted to showcase American horror because I think it's super cool to tell stories that are close to us, they're close to me, right? And so something that's not like far away or in another land, but like right here at home. I think that's pretty impactful. And there's a lot of horror going on in America right now, so I think it's like thematically appropriate. And then I kind of was like, well, what are the things that kind of scare me the most in David Lynch things? And that went back to the doppelgangers and not knowing whether reality is real. and the emotional aspects, like of the character romances and how the characters connect through deep friendships and things like that. So those are the things I kind of like cherry picked, and then I just put them all together to make like that feeling and that experience.
How was the process of like analyzing all those things and trying to reproduce them in a game? How was your approach to it?
Oh my God. So I actually, a few times I was like writing at night, and like I was in the house alone by myself, like in my office. And I would like I would like freak myself out. I would like turn around and be like, did I just hear something in the closet? And like, cause it's basically like, I was trying to like emulate those emotions, like those very strong emotions in the game. And so as I was going through that process, I was feeling a lot of them myself. So I guess it kind of leads into like you as you're making things, right? And I wanted to kind of I wanted to focus on that emotional experience. So I was kind of looking to other games that also had strong emotional experiences in them and try to find the mechanics and tools that made that happen procedurally, like so that it would happen every time instead of just like randomly happen.
And was that the reason you decided to go with this kind of LARP, immersive lab format?
Yeah. And actually, so it was a LARP originally, but really it's kind of in the middle. It's like a LARP / freeform / tabletop game, because you kind of can play it. It functions the same as a tabletop game in that you're all sitting in a room. There's only like 5 to 6 of you. But it does have to be like if you were at a convention, you'd have to have like your own room, you know? And so I guess I took some LARP elements from the immersion in LARP stuff that I had played, like Here Is My Power Button by Brody Atwater, and which isn't released yet, I think, but has been played at many conventions. And Juggernaut by Jason Morningstar, which is also a card-based LARP, and Monster Hearts, which evokes a lot of emotions between relationships and characters. So those are the things I was looking at the most.
Cool. What would be, like, without getting into too many details, what would be the kind of how would be the assessment of something's wrong here? What is the kind of the general structure of the game, the elements at play, that kind of stuff? What would a player expect from a session?
Yeah. Well, it's pretty easy for players. I mean, mostly you just have to kind of think about playing your character and having a conversation with another character. So there's nothing too complicated with the rules. And then the facilitator, there's a facilitator, and they'll kind of guide you through the stages of the game, because they have access to like the timing of the acts and how long each scene is going to be, where the scenes are going to be, and what they're about. So then the players are mostly focused on like their character and role playing, so you can get really immersed into that situation, and they'll be able to choose the emotions they portray, and there's like a list of emotions you portray in each scene. So that's one thing the players choose. And then they also choose, they'll get, after each scene, they'll get cards that will allow them to kind of take control from the facilitator in the scene and interject kind of supernatural elements to the scenes as they go on. So it creates kind of like this interesting dynamic between the players and the facilitator, both being in control of different parts. And that kind of creates the scenes organically as they go. So it's kind of like a free-form role-playing conversational type game. It's I don't know, a lot of people point to Fiasco as an example that's similar.
Is there like some kind of concept or like framing device for the game, like you are in a party or investigating a mystery or whatever, something like that?
Yeah. That's what the facilitator does for the scenes. So the facilitator will frame each scene and be like, you're at the Roadhouse and you're meeting up with your old friend to see a band play. And so then you kind of have the setting and the scene. And the characters have this built-in relationship with each other already, so they can play off of that pretty easily. And then they'll have extra emotions that they can go to for expressing in the scene as well. So the characters don't do any scene setting. They don't have to worry about scene framing.
Cool. So one thing I would like to talk about specifically that really interests me is that what you were mentioning about the doppelganger and the feeling of the feeling of losing the self, your sense of self, and all that. That's a feeling that and a terror that I'm really interested about. That has always resonated with me as well. How do you kind of try to evocate that feeling in the players?
Yeah, totally. That's a very personal thing to me too. I definitely have that feeling sometimes that I'm like not myself, and I think a lot of people can resonate with that feeling. Like you know, you have different parts of your identity that you're not expecting, or you have less control over on the emotional side or something like that. And so I wanted to portray that in the game. Obviously, that's like one of my favorite things. So in Act 2, that comes more into play. Like Act 1 is kind of developing characters in these themes. And then in Act 2, you have more of a confrontation with different parts of different people's selves and stuff like that. And you're in a different game space. It's a little bit of a spoiler to tell you a whole lot about it. I think it's fun to play it without knowing exactly what's happening. But you'll kind of go through these more surreal emotional scenes that are more like, it's kind of like the scenes in Twin Peaks in the Red Room and involving doppelgangers and supernatural things that are happening. So it's kind of like that. So that's where it very specifically kind of leads you into that type of play.
Nice.
Yeah.
And what about the character's emotional exploration? You mentioned the portraying different feelings. We have a question from a spectator. We are talking about Something Is Wrong Here by Kira Magrann, a game about based around the work of David Lynch, which is currently on Kickstarter, and I'm going to send the link out right now again.
Thank you.
But yeah, how do you impulsate that kind of player exploration of the character, of their feelings, of the psyche?
Sure. So there's a few different ways. One of the ways is to kind of encourage bleed, which is the feeling of the character and the player transferring between each other. So the character, you know, you have the ability to kind of you have some autonomy over your character where you'll be playing a character archetype, but you will kind of create what their dark past is and make it personal. So you can decide to play that character with a very personal issue if you want to, or something that is similar to something that you've experienced. And I think that people do this unintentionally in games all the time. Like you'll be playing something and, you know, you are your character more or less, and something emotional will come up for you in the game that's just like very similar to how you feel in real life about something that's going on.
Yeah, that has happened to me. It's one of the most surreal things of playing a character situation, being on the moment, and suddenly you introduce something into the game and then you think, shit, that was based on some very personal stuff. How did I let that slip in? I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, totally. Sometimes it's totally accidental, and other times I think if you intentionally play keeping those personal emotions in mind, it can actually bring about some interesting realizations. I don't know, I've had a lot of great experiences with emotional play or playing something emotional that, you know, even if the game is emotionally manipulating me in some way, or like, you know, how movies do, like there's lots of like movies that are intended to make you feel sad sad or intended to make you feel elated. And they do this with like these little psychological tricks, like the rising of music and the pacing of the story and how long you linger on certain characters and their specific emotions. And so you have like this empathy for them. And yeah, I kind of wanted to emulate that in the game. So the game is a little emotionally manipulative. It will make you feel things on purpose. It's designed to do that. But also people kind of have buy-in to how much they want to feel, like, or what, like you could feel something that is not related to you as a person at all, or you could dive deeply into one of your own personal issues. But nobody else will really know that. And the game is built to kind of support that type of play. So you're not like dumping your baggage on someone, right, unintentionally, but rather you're playing kind of through this alibi of the character, and other characters are kind of there to support you in the game too. So that's kind of cool. That was my intention, and it has played that way every time so far. So
cool. So yeah. Talking about that, one topic that I would like to touch upon is what kind of tools, procedures, workshops, or whatever are you using to allow people to play this game, like safely, to explore these kind of things in a way they feel comfortable, that kind of stuff?
Absolutely, yeah. So there's some. I take some of this stuff from both tabletop games and LARP, because I like them both, and who needs labels, whatever. But I use some workshops at the beginning that kind of lead you into the feeling of the game. So it's kind of like these group questions that make you start to think as a person the types of things you might want to think about in the game when you're playing, like either as character metaphor or on your own level. So it kind of like gets you into that mode. And then there's also these safety mechanics to kind of at the beginning and the end. So at the beginning, there's safety mechanics that's kind of like the X card, if something comes up that someone's uncomfortable with, you can change it at any time and not ask any questions. There's a list of kind of the content warning of all the things that might be in the game, so you're ready for like intense, dark themes, right? And then there's also things. There's some other things at the beginning. There's a lot of safety mechanics at the beginning, and at the end, there's kind of like an aftercare type situation. So, you de-roll, which means that you come out of your character and you take a few minutes to kind of come out of the game. And then everyone kind of talks about different things that they experienced in the game, which is kind of like a debrief. And so that kind of helps you. So it ramps up into the game and it ramps out of the game too. So that cushion for potentially strong emotional feelings is on both sides. And it's kind of like stuff that you see in LARP and role-playing games, but it's also kind of like, I stole a little bit from the kink community, where, there's this thing called aftercare. After you've experienced potentially strong emotions in a kink scene, you have that same time where you're like, you kind of spend time together and make sure that you're okay emotionally before you part ways. There's no abrupt ending of the scene, basically. So those are the tools that I'm using.
Yeah, that's really cool. And the kink community is really great with consent and that kind of stuff. So it's a great source as well. And So another element that you have mentioned about the game is that it uses cards. What role do they play in the game, and why did you decide to use them?
Yeah, totally. So everything's printed on cards because there were some cards in the game to begin with. So I'm like, well, I'm just going to print the whole game on cards. It's fine, as opposed to having like cards in a book, So some of the cards are describing the game, and some of the cards are lists, like the lists of emotions and the lists of scenes that the facilitator can choose from, and those types of things. And then some of them are the prompts that are kept secret, during the scenes that like players will kind of go and pick up and read individually. So it's like kind of easy to pick up and hold and read. So it's kind of a series of prompts, like series of role-playing prompts in any case. The characters are on the cards as well. And then there's more stuff in Act 2 that are on the cards that are kind of like character prompts in particular, as opposed to role-playing prompts. So so they're mostly just prompts, like sentences and stuff like that are easily read and held.
And are the rules of the game itself in the cards as well?
Yeah. So like the first, I don't know, maybe like the first half or third of the cards are just kind of like rules and explaining to the facilitator like how the game should run, because the facilitator is like in charge of running the game like a GM. And so that's all kind of like easily carryable and accessible for the facilitator to kind of look through as well, which is kind of my intent. I try to make things like easy to read and understand so that people can kind of play it more easily.
Yeah, that's really cool. Was it a challenge to fit like an entire game in the cards format?
Yes. I am still editing, to be honest. And because it wasn't like I think the PDF I had originally, it might have been 20 pages, but I had like a lot of extra fluff. And 20 pages isn't a really long game. So I could have written more fluff, right? But I decided if I'm going to print it on cards, just to edit it down to what it needed to be. And I think that strong editing is a good design choice in anything that you make. Just like making the decision to only write what is needed, I think is really cool in role-playing games in particular. Like I think Juggernaut, the one that I mentioned earlier, is also all the instructions and everything are printed on cards. I think there's a few other LARPs that are like that too, like Graham Walmsley's Upstairs Downstairs game, and maybe 368 Days or something like that. 150. Yeah, Winterhorn. Yeah, it's like a popular. It's probably Jason Morningstar's fault. It's he might not have started it. I don't know, but I like the format. I think it's kind of cool, and it's like an interesting format for me to experiment with. I never made cards before, so.
How has it been to kind of produce them physically? How is the process to? Has it been difficult to find like someone to make them physically for real?
Well, I'm just using drive-through cards. Yeah. And then basically the design itself is in InDesign, and it's just like a card layout template. And then from there, it's kind of like just making sure everything fits. And I'm using like a readable font and font size and everything, because card design is like very much about size in a lot of ways, like small, and so trying to think about that, and also just making it visually cool. Like the backs of the cards, I wanted to make sure I got some cool art, and my friend Alyssa, who's local, did all the art for the Kickstarter, and it's all like charcoal fine art drawings that she made for the backs of the cards, which was super cool. It's like very like fine art looking instead of like game illustration looking, so that was cool.
Yeah, it is. The art is really cool. Like I was looking for something to put on the poster for the interview. I was like, actually, I use the actual art of the Kickstarter because it fits so well. What were you looking for, kind of in the for the art of the game, because it's such a weird aesthetic and hard to pin down with Lynch.
Yeah, I'm lucky in that my friend Alyssa is as much a David Lynch fan as I am. so I was just like, make it surreal and Lynchian, and maybe like put, I don't know, make a person, but you can't tell it's a person, and put some wallpaper in there. It looks freaky, and she just came up with these abstract images all on her own, and I was like, yeah, perfect.
The Lynch way, play like a robot.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So kind of on how are we doing on time? Great. We still have some time. So I usually ask a few questions to learn a little bit more about to pick your brain about some design wisdom that we can all use. So the first will be if you could tell us about some issue or problem you have found in the design process of the game, and how did you approach it and solve it?
Oh yeah, that's an awesome question. I really like that. So every game is its own unique challenge. I haven't. I'm trying to design outside my comfort zone. So I'm trying to make things that basically I just haven't made before. I have no idea how to make. So I didn't know how to create a horror feel in a game. I think lots of horror games can be kind of cheesy. Even though I love them, it's hard to kind of feel scared or feel the sense of the uncanny or supernatural. So I wasn't really sure how to do that, and I just basically solved that with research and asking questions, to be honest. So that was an easy one to solve. Maybe I should do a more difficult one, but maybe this would help. I have some resources online. So like I am part of like LARP groups on Facebook, and I was like, hey, how do you create scary feelings in your LARPs? I just asked a whole bunch of people, and I got like a whole bunch of answers. And then I looked at other games that created those same feelings and kind of picked apart the mechanics and what they did. And the answers were like, timing, which is the same thing that's important in a horror movie, so timing and pacing. Make sure that you have intentional timing and pacing in the game that creates enough suspense and build up and makes the monster, scary, but not obvious. You kind of have to sit on that feeling. So I kind of learned that through asking people and looking at other games that did that. And some people recommended games I hadn't played before, like 10 Candles is a horror LARP that's kind of similar to this. It might also be card-based. I haven't played it, but it uses candles that slowly go out as the pacing mechanic. So I started thinking about pacing mechanics, and I have music pacing mechanics in this because it's very similar to, how David Lynch uses like 50% of his movies is his music landscapes, and that's true of a lot of horror too. Like the music and sound is really important, sound design. So yeah, I picked a really specific soundtrack, and you play certain things at certain times, and that kind of helps create an influence like that uncanny suspenseful mood.
So quick question about that. How did you go about finding the right soundtrack?
Yeah, well, it's just like songs that people would use. So it's not like I didn't have a composer make the music. So I kind of just played a lot of music that made me feel the way I wanted people to feel in the game. And so it was like Portishead and Sufjan Stevens, and there's like a website you can go to for like electricity sounds. And so like that's one of the songs as well. It's just this it's like a background buzzing, and it's really uncomfortable to listen to as you're playing. And a Nine Inch Nails song because it's David Lynch and he always uses Nine Inch Nails.
Nice. The next question will be if you could tell us something you learned about game design generally in the process of developing your game, some lessons or something you realized.
Yeah. The biggest thing I realized with this game was to trust myself and just do the things that I like. And other people will see the value in that. So like, I think this is maybe the most personal game I've ever made, in that it is very much about things that I am afraid of on a subconscious level, like things that are very personally affecting to me. And so I kind of like I did the David Lynch thing. I went deep into my subconscious to kind of pull out what this game would be about. So even though it was based on those things in the David Lynch movies, the parts of me that are in this are very like identity based and kind of queer identity based and stuff like that. It's not overtly so, unlike I think many of my other games that are like overtly about lesbian snakes, you know what I mean? And so this one goes a little bit deeper. And so I wasn't sure how people would respond to that, and it turns out they really like it. So that's awesome.
So, and an extra question related to this one, just for this occasion, what did you discover about David Lynch's work in the process of developing the game?
Yeah, so he uses transcendental meditation to deal with depression, but also as a way to focus his creative work. So he talks a lot about it. At first I thought it was a cult, and I was really worried because there's all these famous people who are like a part of this transcendental meditation thing that he runs. But what it actually, it helps people who are, who maybe are poor or marginalized in some way, deal with mental health issues, and kind of teach the basics of transcendental meditation in order to do that, like mindfulness. And I thought that was so cool, and how, he's basically helping young artists. He always says in these interviews, he's like, artists, you do not need to suffer to make art that is dark. You don't have to suffer as a creator to make good things. You can be happy in your life. And transcendental meditation is the way I've found happiness. And it is also a way that I found that I work better. I work better when I'm focused, when I'm happy, when I'm not dealing with my mental health issues. And I think that's such a cool message in general. I think a lot of creators, do deal with a lot of mental health stuff. I definitely do. And it's hard. It's difficult to make things. And it is also kind of taboo in our culture to make things in America. And fighting against all of that and also making something good and also making money is really hard. And so having that as a tool and having another huge artist talk so well about it, I think is really inspiring.
Yeah, there's definitely this narrative of artists exploiting their suffering, and we're demanding it. Like, we want this myths like not Picasso, like we have these histories about artists and Van Gogh's being like having a shitty life that are sometimes made up because for some reason we want to believe artists have to have a shitty life.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty harmful for people.
Yeah, the trope of the starving artist, even, or how artists have to be singular people working all by themselves, and sometimes be poor their whole lives and then be discovered after death, or musicians who die at the age of 27, like all this stuff. I think it's really harmful for young creative people who think they might need to be like that. So
it justifies treating artists like shit because they are doing it for the art. They don't need to get paid or
totally
eat.
Totally. Yeah. I hope it changes. I see it shifting, even with things like Kickstarter and Patreon. I mean, both things that I'm doing pretty okay on. Like, they are the way that I'm making my money in my life right now. It's my full-time job, basically. And, I'm not starving. I'm not doing super well, but they are supporting me. And those types of things, before they existed, how would you find these artists and creators who are making things, So I think they're a good start to a trend in tools that we might see in the future, connecting creators with people who want to buy their stuff.
Yeah, I think in the future, this trend of being like having your presence in different platforms and having like a blog and a Patreon, all that is something that artists are going to be able to do, and I think they're going to need to do.
It's the good side of social media. Like, the cool thing about social media is that it connects you to people without a mediator, right? And you can just connect directly to people. The bad part is how they're designed to exploit you. But hopefully they'll get better. Social media is just starting out as a thing. So I'm optimistic. I'm cautiously optimistic they will continue to support creators and marginalized communities and people who need to connect globally in those ways.
Okay, so lastly, last question for today. Could you tell us some meaningful or cool or interesting moment that you remember from some of the play testings of the game, like some cool short story that you have seen in the game?
Yeah, well, actually, some of my favorite stories are the stories after the game because I've only been present for a few playtests. The other playtests have happened externally without me. But after the first playtest, Anna Kreider came up to me. She was like, Kira, this game made me feel so many sad things, and it's devastatingly effective. I loved it. And that felt really good to me just because I was like, yes, it's doing the thing I designed it to do. You know, that feeling when you're like, I designed it right. So that was pretty cool. But mostly I really liked how even the players who were playing their character archetypes, they would play like, you know, archetypes that are very similar to David Lynch story type archetypes. And even though they hadn't seen any David Lynch things, they were doing David Lynch things in the game. They were like having long conversations about stuff that's totally normal and kind of boring. And they were like creating things that they were afraid of in the same way that David Lynch characters notice something that they're afraid of. So that was pretty cool. I guess it speaks to the fact that you don't really even have to know anything about a David Lynch movie to really enjoy this game.
That's really cool. With that, I think we are going to end the interview for today. Thanks a lot to everyone who was present during the interview. Thanks a lot to Kira for being here. I recommend all of you that you check out Something Is Wrong here on Kickstarter. It's still on Kickstarter. You still have the chance to pick it up right now. And also all the other amazing work he has put out, and her work on YouTube. If you can support her on Patreon, where you can get access to all her current working process. She has many cool projects coming out. I'll probably try to drag her down here again once Sync goes out, because I'm really excited about that one too.
I am too. It's way more complicated, it turns out.
But yeah, thanks a lot to everyone. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, support Kira, and if you have some time as well, support my channel. You can subscribe, follow it here and on YouTube, follow me on social media, leave comments, give a likes, and all those social media capitalist bullshit that allow us to continue doing this, sadly. But also, it is a cool thing to get people feedback. So thanks a lot to everyone. And if you happen to be one of those people who understand Spanish, in half an hour or an hour, we are going to go live with our game of Plagues in the Dark. So maybe stay put for that as well. So anyway, in any case, thanks a lot. We'll see you soon. And until then, live long and prosper. May the force be with you.
Thanks so much.
See you next time.